Deep beneath the desert sands lie forgotten rivers of stone. Ancient engineers, with no computers or drills, built water networks so brilliant they defy modern science. This is the story of subterranean aqueducts, the hidden arteries of antiquity. By the end, you will see these silent tunnels not as ruins, but as masterclasses in sustainable design, offering real solutions for our own thirsty world. How did they map water in the dark or maintain a perfect slope for miles using only rope and intuition? We will travel from Persian Qanats to Roman Specus, uncovering feats that humbled today's experts. What does it truly mean to build something that lasts 1,000 years? A line of craters marches across the barren landscape, a strange geometry in an empty place. To a weary traveler, these openings in the earth are a mystery, but below lies the truth, a hidden river flowing in perfect silence. This is a qanat, the most elegant form of subterranean aqueduct. At its core, the concept is brilliantly simple. These are engineered underground channels, built to move water from a distant source like a mountain aquifer directly to the heart of a town or farmland, sometimes traveling for dozens of kilometers. The genius was in taking the water underground. Unlike open canals that lose precious liquid to the sun and wind, these tunnels protected their cargo from evaporation and kept it clean from contamination. It was a profound understanding of a basic principle. To preserve water, you must hide it from the sky. Experts like Dr. John Peter Olson emphasized that these were not just technical projects. They were monumental social achievements. Building one required a shared vision and coordinated labor across generations. To understand how, we need to look at the three essential parts of the system. First, the mother well. This was the deepest shaft, dug straight down until it pierced the water table in the foothills, tapping into the underground reservoir. From there, the second part began, a gently sloping tunnel, carved with painstaking care to guide the water by gravity alone toward its destination. The slope had to be just right, too steep, and the water would erode the tunnel walls, too shallow, and it would stagnate. The third component made construction possible, a line of vertical ventilation shafts, those mysterious craters on the surface. These provided air for the diggers, a way to remove excavated earth, and critical checkpoints for maintaining the tunnel's perfect downhill grade. Picture the labor, teams of workers passing baskets of rock and soil up these dark shafts, guided only by oil lamps and shouted instructions. They were building in reverse, starting at the destination and digging back toward the mother well, all while ensuring their tunnel maintained that invisible, crucial slope. It was a generational project, a slow, determined crawl through the earth. The coordination needed boggles the mind. How did the planners standing on the surface visualize the hidden water table and map a path to it? Without modern drills or sensors, they had to see the aquifer through observation and inherited wisdom. This foundational mystery of ancient hydrology sets the stage for our journey. To truly grasp their brilliance, we must travel to the places where this technology was born, starting with its most iconic heartland. The Iranian Plateau is a land of stark beauty and brutal necessity, a place where water is life's most precious currency. Here, over 3,000 years ago, the Persian Qanat was born from an urgent need to survive and thrive. This was not a simple ditch in the ground. It was a masterclass in sustainable engineering, a response to a climate that offered little but demanded everything. The architects of these systems were the Maganis, revered water experts whose knowledge was passed from father to son. Their tools were humble, a plumb line for vertical alignment, a simple level to check the slope, and the stars themselves to chart a course across the empty landscape. They would align a series of construction shafts over distances that could span dozens of kilometers, each one a marker in a vast, invisible blueprint. The societal importance of these water veins cannot be overstated. In the Achaemenid Empire, the law was clear. Damaging a qanat was an offense punishable by death. This was not an act of cruelty, but a recognition of collective survival. The qanat was the community's beating heart. To harm it was to threaten the life of the entire settlement. The construction process was a monumental communal effort. Workers began by digging the mother well, often descending through solid rock until they heard the welcome sound of seeping water. From the planned destination point, teams would then dig the gently sloping tunnel backward toward that source. As they carved through the earth, other teams dug the vertical shafts down to meet them, providing air, light, and a way to remove the spoil. The gradient was everything. A drop of just a few centimeters over 100 meters was often enough to create a steady, gentle flow that would last for centuries. Consider the Qanat of Gonabad. This astonishing system, built in the first millennium before the Common Era, still functions today. Its main well plunges over 300 meters deep, and its tunnels stretch for more than 33 kilometers, delivering life to the dry earth. The endurance of Gonabad is a quiet testament to the foresight of its creators. They built not for their own lifetimes, but for a future they would never see. This profound legacy of hydrological wisdom did not stay contained within Persia's borders. Like water seeking its own level, the knowledge of the Qanat began to flow outward, carried by trade, conquest, and curiosity, ready to shape the ambitions of another rising power far to the west. The Romans saw water not merely as a resource, but as a declaration of order and civilization. While we picture their aqueducts as majestic stone arches striding across valleys, the true genius of their system was often hidden from view. Beneath the Italian countryside, a vast network of covered tunnels, known as the Specus, carried the lifeblood of the empire. These subterranean channels were not an afterthought. They were a deliberate choice to protect the precious flow from pollution, from enemy sabotage, and from the evaporating sun, all while maintaining the precise, gentle slope that gravity required. The engineer Vitruvius left detailed notes on their construction, specifying how to line tunnels with a waterproof mortar called opus signinum, a mix of lime and crushed terracotta, and how to use clay or lead pipes for pressurized sections. His writings reveal a mindset that blended rigorous geometry with practical craftsmanship. Maintenance was engineered into the very design. Regular inspection shafts allowed teams of workers, the aquarii, to descend and clear blockages. Settling tanks were built at intervals where water would slow down, allowing sand and sediment to fall out before the flow continued its journey. The Aqua Claudia, one of Rome's grandest aqueducts, is a perfect example. For miles, its channel disappears into hillsides and runs in deep cuttings, emerging onto those famous arches only when the terrain demanded it. This hidden infrastructure demanded more than technical skill. It required an unprecedented level of organization. Roman law codified the protection of these waterways. A dedicated magistrate, the curator aquarum, oversaw their operation with the full authority of the state behind him. Damaging a public aqueduct was a serious public offense. This fusion of engineering brilliance and administrative muscle created a water network that supported a metropolis of over 1 million people, setting a standard that would echo through history. Yet, even as Rome perfected its underground conduits on another continent under a different sun, a strikingly similar solution was being carved from the desert sand by a culture working in complete isolation. Far to the south, beneath the endless dunes of the Sahara, another civilization was solving the same eternal problem with its own distinctive signature. Here, the Berber people and later Islamic societies engineered the Figara. At its core, the principle was the same as the Persian Qanat, a gently sloping tunnel tapping a distant aquifer. But the environment shaped its character. These channels were the arteries of oasis life, often drawing water from the foothills of mountains like the Atlas and distributing it across vast, flat plains of sand and rock. The true marvel of the Figara was not just its excavation, but the social contract that was built around it. Water from a single Figara would be divided among many families according to ancient, unwritten codes, with time-based shares meticulously measured by sundials or water clocks. This was not a technology imposed by a distant emperor, but one born from and sustained by the collective will of a community. The legendary city of Timbuktu, that fabled center of trade and scholarship, owed its very possibility to these hidden waterways. They provided the water for its gardens, for its libraries, and for the caravans that brought gold and salt across the desert. Building a Figara in such terrain was a battle against collapse. Diggers worked through unstable layers of sand and gravel, shoring up the tunnels with palm wood supports that needed constant replacement. Silt was a relentless enemy, requiring annual cleaning expeditions where teams would descend to clear the channels, a dangerous but vital ritual. In the Mzab Valley of Algeria, this ancient practice is not a relic. Traditional water councils still meet to manage the Figara networks, adjudicating disputes and organizing maintenance, a system of governance that has outlasted empires. Their enduring success poses a profound question for our modern world, where water conflicts are increasingly common. What might we learn from a system where fair distribution and communal responsibility were engineered into the very foundation of survival? This map of heartlands reveals a beautiful truth. From Persia to Rome to the Sahara, the same brilliant idea, to bring water through the dark, cool earth, was adapted, reinvented, and perfected by different hands. Each culture left its fingerprint on the stone and sand, proving that this was more than engineering. It was a universal response to a fundamental human need. Yet, this global phenomenon presents us with our first great puzzle. How did these builders, separated by continents and centuries, all manage to perform the initial, critical act? How did they find the water in the first place without a single drill or satellite map to guide them? The desert holds its secrets close, but it also whispers clues to those who know how to listen. Finding the starting point for a qanat or a figara was an art form grounded in a deep, generational reading of the landscape. Ancient hydrologists were master detectives. They would look for telltale lines of greener, more resilient vegetation snaking across an arid plain, a silent map of water flowing just beneath the surface. They observed where certain animals dug or where insects gathered, understanding that these creatures were sensing moisture invisible to the human eye. The very shape of the land told a story. A dry riverbed or wadi might indicate a buried channel. A certain type of rock formation could signal a layer impermeable to water, creating a trapped aquifer above it. In the mountains of Yemen, builders would enter caves in the cool of the morning, feeling for walls beaded with condensation, a sure sign that a reservoir of groundwater was nearby, weeping through the stone. This was science born of intimate, patient observation, a dialogue with the environment conducted over centuries. Once a promising source was identified, the real precision work began. The tunnel had to have a perfect, gentle slope, too steep, and the water would rush through, eroding the channel walls and arriving in a destructive torrent. Too shallow, and the flow would stagnate, allowing silt to build up and block the precious conduit. The ideal gradient was often less than 1 degree, a slope so slight you would barely perceive it walking along it. To achieve this over miles of darkness, engineers used ingenious, simple tools. The corabates, a long wooden frame with a water-filled groove along its top, acted as a precise level. By sighting along its edge, a surveyor could ensure a perfectly horizontal line. To measure drop over distance, they might use a series of these levels or employ hanging plumb lines and marked poles. Some theories suggest they used chains of bonfires at night, aligning their light over long distances to create a straight reference line across the terrain. Every vertical shaft dug down to the tunnel level became a new point to verify their work, a chance to check that the floor was dropping at exactly the required minuscule rate. This was not guesswork, it was applied geometry and physics mastered without formal equations. Hydrologist Dr. Susan Lee points out that these builders possessed a profound intuitive understanding of the water table. They knew it rose and fell with the seasons and with years of rainfall. They knew how far upstream to place their mother well to tap into a sustainable flow, one that would not drain the source faster than nature could replenish it. This knowledge was a living library, passed not through written manuals but through apprenticeship. A young digger would learn from his father and uncles, memorizing the feel of the rock, the sound of the earth, the subtle signs of water that no instrument could yet detect. The master builder, the Magoni or the Figara expert, held a status akin to a priest or a sage because he held the survival of the community in his mind and in his hands. Their success presents a quiet challenge to our modern reliance on technology. It asks us, could we find water if our satellites and sensors failed? Could we read the land with such clarity? This mastery of finding and guiding water sets the stage for an even more staggering physical achievement. The act of carving these perfect arteries through the earth, often for dozens of miles, using only human strength and simple tools. Maintaining a perfect slope for miles in complete darkness is a problem that would tax a modern surveyor. An error of just a fraction of a percent could doom the entire project. If the tunnel sloped too little, the water would simply sit there, becoming a stagnant, silty grave for all that labor. Too steep, and the rushing flow would scour the channel walls, leading to collapses and catastrophic failure. The target was a gradient so gentle it feels almost flat, a drop of only about 1 meter for every kilometer of tunnel. To achieve this, ancient engineers turned water itself into their most reliable tool. They would dig long, shallow surface trenches and fill them with water, creating a perfectly level reference line by observing the calm surface. From this, they could measure down to set their grade. Or they used the corabates, that remarkable wooden frame with a central water channel. If the water touched both ends equally, the frame was level. They could then sight along its top edge to a series of marked poles in the distance, creating a straight line across the landscape. This line was then translated underground through a chain of vertical shafts. Each shaft served as a checkpoint. Diggers below would receive instructions from the surface, adjusting the tunnel floor up or down by mere finger widths to maintain that critical, invisible downhill path. Some scholars speculate that for very long alignments, they might have used coordinated bonfires at night, their flickering lights creating a straight guide across the hills. The famous Upalinos tunnel in Samos, built to carry water, shows this precision in action. Two teams dug from opposite ends of a mountain, meeting almost perfectly in the middle with only a slight corrective bend. They accomplished this with geometry and sheer skill, no lasers in sight. For water tunnels, the vertical shafts were more than just construction exits. They were permanent features of the design, acting as vents to release air pressure and as ongoing inspection points for every generation that followed. This allowed communities to monitor the flow and clean silt, ensuring the slope never degraded. How did they hold such a complex, invisible line in their minds? It suggests a profound spatial intelligence, an ability to project a perfect geometric idea onto the chaotic reality of rock and soil. They weren't just digging a hole. They were materializing a line of thought, and the sheer volume of earth they had to move to make that thought a reality is almost beyond comprehension. The numbers behind these tunnels are staggering. To create just 1 kilometer of a modestly sized qanat, workers had to excavate and remove thousands of cubic meters of earth and stone. Multiply that by tens or even hundreds of kilometers across entire regions, and the scale of Earth moved rivals some of the most iconic construction projects in history. This was not the work of a few dedicated diggers. It was an industrial operation of the ancient world, mobilizing thousands of hands. In the Roman context, this workforce was often composed of enslaved individuals, soldiers, or conscripted laborers from conquered territories. Their lives were spent in the dark, in tunnels often no wider than their shoulders, swinging bronze and iron picks against unyielding rock, filling leather buckets with spoil to be winched up to the surface through those vertical shafts. The air was thin, thick with dust, and the constant risk of collapse was a shadow over every shift. The logistical challenge of supporting such an army of labor in remote, arid locations is almost as impressive as the engineering itself. These workers needed food, water, shelter, and tools. A whole support economy had to travel with the project, a moving city dedicated solely to the act of digging. Management required a structure as precise as the tunnels themselves. Roman inscriptions and records point to military-style organization, with centurions overseeing segments of work, or specialized guilds of aquarii managing particular sections. The Aqua Marcia, one of Rome's longest aqueducts, involved carving through miles of hard volcanic tuff. Historians believe its subterranean sections alone would have required decades of continuous, grueling effort. Why would any society commit such vast resources to a project whose most critical parts were entirely invisible? The answer is simple yet profound. Water was the ultimate source of power. A reliable supply meant stable agriculture, which meant wealth and tax revenue. It meant healthy, growing cities that could support larger armies and grander monuments. It meant political control. For a ruler, funding a massive aqueduct was not just a public utility project. It was a direct investment in their own authority and legacy. The human cost borne by those in the tunnels was the hidden foundation upon which that visible civilization was built. Their endurance, their skill, and their coordinated effort transformed a geological challenge into a hydrological miracle. And they did it all with a toolkit that, by our standards, seems impossibly rudimentary. Their monumental effort was matched only by the cleverness of their methods. To carve a path through solid bedrock, ancient engineers employed a technique as dramatic as it was effective: fire setting. Teams would build a fierce fire directly against the rock face, heating it for hours until it was nearly glowing. Then they would douse the superheated stone with water or vinegar. The sudden, violent contraction would cause the rock to crack and shatter, creating a fractured surface that could be attacked with simpler tools. It was a dangerous, smoky, and painstaking process, but it allowed them to conquer geology itself with nothing more than fire, water, and sheer determination. Primary tools of the trade were, of course, the pick and the chisel. Early versions were made of bronze, but the widespread adoption of iron provided a much harder, more durable edge. The adze, a tool for shaping wood, was also crucial for creating the wooden supports that held the tunnels open. All the while, the debris had to go somewhere. Workers filled leather buckets with broken rock and soil, which were then hauled up the vertical shafts using simple rope winches. The design of these winches, especially the specialized Qanat windlass, was a masterpiece of mechanical efficiency. It allowed a small team at the surface to lift heavy loads from astonishing depths, a technology so perfectly suited to its task that it saw almost no need for improvement for over 2,000 years. But the true sophistication is revealed in the temporary structures built inside the darkness. Archaeologist Andrew Wilson points to evidence of intricate wooden scaffolding and centering used to construct arched ceilings within larger tunnels. This means they weren't just digging holes, they were building stable, permanent architecture underground, with all the planning and carpentry that required on the surface. At sites like the Dura Europos aqueduct in Syria, the walls still bear the precise, repetitive marks of their tools, a direct record of each swing of the hammer, telling a silent story of progress measured inch by grueling inch. This work was fraught with sudden danger. How did they handle a catastrophic tunnel collapse or a sudden inundation of water from a hidden spring? The answer lies in a pragmatic, problem-solving ingenuity. They used timber shoring to brace unstable sections, and they developed drainage channels and even small diversion dams within the tunnels themselves to manage water during construction. They adapted to every challenge with solutions born of observation and experience. This adaptive genius is what modern engineers find so deeply impressive. It was an intelligence not just of design but of reaction, a fluency in the language of earth and stone that we have largely replaced with machinery. And all of this raw effort and clever problem-solving would have been for nothing if the tunnels themselves could not endure. This leads us to the next quiet marvel, the durable, ingenious materials they used to make these hidden waterways last for centuries. The legacy of these tunnels was sealed not by machines, but by the very earth they moved through. To ensure their creations would outlast empires, ancient engineers became master alchemists of the local landscape. The Romans, for instance, perfected a remarkable waterproof lining called opus signinum. This was not a simple mortar. It was a carefully crafted blend of slaked lime and crushed pottery or brick, creating a dense, almost ceramic-like coating that could be troweled onto the channel walls. This material actively resisted the relentless flow of water, preventing leakage that could erode the surrounding soil and cause a catastrophic collapse. It was a clever recycling of materials, turning broken pottery into a permanent shield for the lifeblood of a city. Meanwhile, in the Persian heartlands, the approach was beautifully minimalist and adaptive. In areas where the tunnel passed through solid, stable rock, they often left the walls completely bare, trusting the natural geology to hold. But when they encountered loose, crumbly soil that threatened to cave in, they didn't import fancy materials. They used what was at hand. Artisans would craft rings from local clay, baking them into sturdy terracotta hoops that were stacked inside the tunnel like a lining of giant, interlocking pipes. In other places, they meticulously shaped stones from nearby quarries, fitting them together in dry masonry so precise that the joints were nearly invisible, requiring no binding mortar at all. The sheer skill of this stonework is breathtakingly evident in structures like the subterranean channels feeding the Pont du Gard. The stone blocks are cut with such geometric perfection that they lock together under their own weight, a testament to the stonemason's art. Perhaps most astonishing of all is the Roman knowledge of hydraulic concrete, a special mix that could actually cure and harden underwater, a secret that was lost for centuries after the empire's fall. This hints at a profound, almost intuitive understanding of material science that we once dismissed. So how did these ancient materials defy centuries of flowing water, shifting earth, and even earthquakes? The answer lies in a harmony with natural forces. The gentle, consistent slope they achieved minimized turbulent, erosive flow. Their mortars and concretes were often more flexible than modern rigid mixes, allowing them to absorb subtle ground movements without cracking. And by using local materials, the structures essentially became part of the local environment, expanding and contracting with the same soils they were built from. This durability stands as a quiet but powerful challenge to our modern assumptions. We often think stronger, faster, and newer is inherently better. Yet here are structures built without steel reinforcement or polymer additives that have carried water for longer than most modern nations have existed. Their longevity teaches us that superior infrastructure isn't always about the most advanced material, but about the most appropriate one, chosen with deep respect for the context. This principle of local resourcefulness governed every step, but even the finest materials are pointless without a system to care for them. That care required a social contract etched not in stone, but in daily practice across generations. The true genius of these networks was not just in their construction, but in their survival. A perfect tunnel is useless if it clogs with silt after a single season. This is where the ancient systems reveal their most profound defiance of our modern expectations. They were designed with their own future in mind. They were living, breathing infrastructure, sustained by sophisticated social and administrative machinery that operated for centuries. Think of a specific family in a Persian village, where the responsibility for cleaning the local qanat was passed from father to son like a sacred trust. Each year, these workers would descend into the dark, narrow tunnels, clearing debris and repairing cracks by the faint light of oil lamps. This was not a casual job, it was a vital, inherited duty, and the community's survival depended on their skill and courage. This maintenance was woven into the fabric of law and culture. Water rights, cleaning schedules, and penalties for neglect were meticulously recorded, often on clay tablets or in community ledgers, transforming a technical task into a social contract. Across the empire, the Romans mirrored this with a remarkably organized bureaucracy. They appointed official curators to oversee entire aqueduct systems. Beneath these officials worked the aquarii, teams of maintenance workers who patrolled the underground Specus. They used the same access shafts we can still see dotting the Italian countryside today, checking for leaks, removing mineral deposits, and ensuring no one was illegally tapping the line. The famous Tabula Peutingeriana, that sprawling map of Roman roads, is more than just a traveler's guide. It is a silent testament to the immense administrative web required to manage an empire, a network that undoubtedly included the vital communication lines needed to coordinate the care of distant aqueducts. This intergenerational commitment speaks volumes. It tells us that water was not viewed as a disposable commodity, but as a precious legacy. The community's identity and future were literally invested in the tunnel's health. This is starkly different from many modern, centralized systems where maintenance can be an anonymous, budget-dependent afterthought. The qanats of Turpan in China stand as the ultimate proof of this principle. For over 2,000 years, through the rise and fall of dynasties, the water has flowed because generation after generation chose to uphold their responsibility. They understood that stewardship was not a one-time act but a perpetual promise. This sustainable model of care, deeply embedded in community, prompts a deeper question. What was the ultimate goal of all this meticulous maintenance? It was to preserve a relationship with the environment that was far more harmonious than we might assume. That promise of stewardship extended far beyond the tunnel walls and into the very landscape. A qanat was never just a hidden pipe, it was a living organ within the body of the earth. Where the cool, clean water finally emerged into the sunlight at the outlet, it created an oasis. This was not an accident but a core part of the design. The flowing water nurtured gardens and orchards, yes, but it also did something more profound. It recharged the local groundwater. Some water would seep back into the soil along its course, replenishing the very source it came from in a gentle, sustainable cycle. This process created humid microclimates in the desert, pockets of cool air where plants could thrive and communities could gather. The channel became a corridor for life, supporting insects, birds, and other animals, transforming a single water source into a hub of biodiversity. This reveals a guiding principle modern hydrology is still struggling to fully implement: the rule of sustainable yield. Ancient engineers intuitively understood that an aquifer was not a bottomless bank account to be drained. They tapped only a portion, a careful share of what the annual rains and snowmelt could replenish. They harvested the interest, never the principle. This stands in stark contrast to many modern wells, which can pump water out faster than nature can put it back, leading to sinking land and dried-up springs. We can see this elegant, cascading use of water in the Karez systems of Afghanistan. There, the water was allocated with incredible efficiency. The first, cleanest portion from the underground channel was reserved for drinking. Further downstream, it would be channeled to irrigate family gardens. Then, what remained might flow to a water mill to grind grain, using its last bit of energy before finally being directed to the main agricultural fields. Every drop had multiple purposes in a sequence that respected both human need and the water's diminishing quality. Environmental historians point out that these ancient networks often left the land healthier. Because they relied on gravity and seepage, not forceful pumping, they avoided a common curse of modern irrigation, salinization. When you flood fields with pumped water and it evaporates under a hot sun, it leaves behind salts that slowly poison the soil. The gentle, subterranean delivery of qanats and fogaras prevented this toxic buildup. Their design was a dialogue with the ecosystem, not a command. So how did they achieve this harmony without complex environmental impact studies or computer models? It was knowledge written in the landscape itself, learned over generations of observation. They saw where plants grew greener, they felt where the air was cooler, and they understood that their survival depended on working within those natural patterns. This deep ecological intuition makes their next achievement even more startling, because they also mastered forces of water that seemed to defy nature itself. But that gentle ecological wisdom coexisted with a boldness to bend the physical rules of water itself. Water flowing uphill is the classic image of an impossibility, yet Roman engineers made it a routine fact. Their secret was the inverted siphon, a masterstroke of hidden hydraulics. To cross a deep valley, they would not build a towering, vulnerable bridge. Instead, they constructed a sealed pipeline that ran down one slope, across the valley floor, and back up the other side. The water, trapped within the pipe, would rush down the descending leg, building up enough pressure to push itself up the opposite side, defying gravity through sheer force. These were not small experiments. The siphon at Aspendos in Turkey was a monumental feat, using massive stone blocks hollowed out and sealed together with lead to form a pressurized conduit that crossed a gorge. Imagine the confidence required to carve a watertight pipe from stone, calculating the precise angles and diameters needed to ensure the water had enough momentum to climb, but not so much that it would burst the seals. They worked with lead pipes too, and ceramic materials that could withstand tremendous internal pressure. This technology was documented by thinkers like Hero of Alexandria, who wrote about the principles of pneumatics and hydraulics, proving this was not guesswork but applied science. They understood that water, when confined, could act as a solid column transmitting force. How did they do the math without our formulas? It was likely a combination of brilliant geometry, observed ratios from smaller models, and generations of hard-won experience. A failed siphon meant a catastrophic burst and a wasted mountain of labor, so their success rate speaks to a profound, if undocumented, grasp of physics. And their control over water did not end at the siphon. Inside the dark tunnels of their aqueducts, they installed precise regulation systems. Stone weirs, essentially low dams, could be placed to subtly raise the water level upstream, creating a consistent head of pressure. Loose gates, blocks of wood or bronze that could be raised or lowered, acted like valves to throttle the flow or divert it into different channels. This allowed a single aqueduct to supply a public bath, a nobleman's villa, and a neighborhood fountain at different times, all according to a strict legal schedule. It was early fluid dynamics in practice, managing the speed, volume, and distribution of a living resource. These innovations reveal a mind that saw water not just as a substance to be moved, but as a force to be harnessed and meticulously controlled. This intellectual leap, from simply guiding water to actively commanding its behavior, marks a pinnacle of ancient engineering. Yet such grand projects were never just the work of brilliant minds alone. They were born from and in turn shaped the very fabric of the societies that built them. The mouth of a qanat was far more than a water source. It was the living heart of a community. In ancient Persian cities, this was where people gathered to collect water, to trade news, and to conduct business in the cool, shaded area created by the emerging stream. The very layout of a town was often dictated by the qanat's path, with the most affluent neighborhoods clustering closest to the main outlet. Your access to water, measured in precise time slots, was a direct reflection of your social standing and wealth. Water rights were property bought, sold, and inherited, weaving the engineering achievement directly into the social and economic fabric. These networks could not exist in a vacuum. Building a qanat spanning dozens of kilometers or a Roman aqueduct tunneling through mountains required an immense, organized effort. This meant one of two social engines: powerful centralized authority or deeply rooted communal cooperation. A king or emperor could command the vast resources and labor necessary, using the project to demonstrate power and secure loyalty by providing a public good. In Rome, the abundant, clean water flowing from countless fountains was a potent symbol of imperial civilization and benevolence. The Lex Quinctia and other laws strictly protected the aqueducts from pollution or private theft, framing clean water access as a civic right, but one granted and regulated by the state. Conversely, in many desert communities, foggaras were built and maintained through collective effort. Here, the social engine was not a top-down decree, but a shared covenant for survival. The intricate water-sharing rules from the Nefta Figara in Tunisia, passed down through families, were a blueprint for social order, defining responsibilities and privileges within the community. Yet, this social dimension had a shadow. The construction of these marvels often rested on profound inequality. As anthropologist Dr. Teresa Huntsman points out, the massive labor required was frequently supplied by corvée labor, where citizens were compelled to work, or by enslaved people. The very infrastructure that unified a society and provided a common good was, in its creation, often built upon a foundation of coercion and hardship. The stones of the aqueduct channel, worn smooth by centuries of flowing water, were first laid by hands that had no choice in the matter. This duality is central to understanding their full impact. The networks unified communities by providing a shared lifeline and a focus for civic identity. They stratified them by codifying who had water, when, and how much. They required legal innovation to manage and protect the resource, shaping early concepts of public utility law. In essence, these subterranean channels were mirrors, reflecting and amplifying the best and most challenging aspects of the societies that built them. They were not just feats of engineering, but profound social contracts, etched not on paper but into the earth itself. And where water flows reliably, economies begin to flourish. That social contract, written in water, was the bedrock of ancient economies. The oasis of Palmyra did not simply exist in the desert. It commanded it, becoming a glittering hub of trade precisely because its hidden fagaras provided a guaranteed oasis. Caravans crossing hundreds of miles of barren landscape could plan their routes around these reliable water sources, knowing they could replenish their animals, their traders, and their goods. This transformed a simple stopping point into a thriving marketplace, a cosmopolitan city where goods, ideas, and wealth converged. But the water did more than quench the thirst of travelers. It fed the fields that surrounded these urban centers. Subterranean channels enabled the cultivation of high-value cash crops like dates, olives, cotton, and fruits in regions where rainfall was a rare gift. What was once marginal land became an agricultural powerhouse, generating surplus food that could support a non-farming population of artisans, merchants, and scholars. The wealth generated by this water-fed abundance is etched in stone. Look at the magnificent architecture of Isfahan in Iran, with its stunning blue-tiled mosques and bustling bazaars. That grandeur was not born from oil or mineral riches, but from the prosperity sustained by its vast qanat system, which turned the surrounding plain into a fertile garden. The economic lifeblood pumped silently underground, funding arts, sciences, and monumental building projects that defined civilizations. This connection made these networks vulnerable to economic shifts. Historians note that the decline of certain qanat systems can be traced to the changing routes of the Silk Road. When trade caravans found new paths, cities like Bukhara, whose qanats were critical nodes in that global network, could see their economic purpose fade, and with it, the collective will to maintain the complex water infrastructure. Later, the introduction of diesel pumps and deep well drilling in the 20th century offered a seemingly easier, if ultimately unsustainable, alternative, leading many communities to abandon the labor-intensive upkeep of their ancient channels. This raises a profound question. What happens to a city when its subterranean heart fails? The answer is a slow, quiet unraveling. Agriculture shrinks, the surplus vanishes, and the economic foundation crumbles. Populations may disperse, and the grand buildings, once symbols of prosperity, become ruins surrounded by desert. The story of these networks is a powerful lesson in economic resilience, showing that true wealth is not just what you have, but what you can sustain across generations. And where there is such a vital source of wealth and life, there will always be those who seek to control it or to take it away. A secret water source could mean the difference between surrender and survival. For a city under siege, a known spring or surface river was a fatal vulnerability, an obvious target for a besieging army to poison or divert. But a city fed by a hidden subterranean aqueduct, its source concealed miles away in the hills, its entrance fortified within the city walls, possessed an invisible lifeline. This was the ultimate strategic advantage, turning a fortress into a self-sustaining island capable of outlasting any blockade. Ancient military engineers were masters of this hidden geometry, deliberately designing water systems with defense in mind. They would bury intake points, camouflage the mouths of qanats, and construct heavily guarded outlet towers. The goal was to make the lifeblood of the city untouchable, transforming water from a passive resource into an active component of the defense. The Romans understood this principle perfectly, and they applied it in reverse as a tactic of conquest. During the brutal siege of Jerusalem in the 1st century, Roman legions systematically targeted and destroyed the aqueducts supplying the city, a calculated move to break the will of the defenders through thirst. This was hydrological warfare, and it was devastatingly effective. Centuries earlier, the Assyrian king Sennacherib took a different approach, using water as a symbol of unstoppable power. He proudly inscribed accounts of constructing massive subterranean channels to bring water to his new capital, Nineveh, from distant mountains. This was not just civic engineering, it was a boast, a demonstration that his authority could command the very landscape and bend it to his will. Such projects required profound secrecy. The precise maps of tunnel routes, the locations of hidden mother wells, this knowledge was guarded as closely as any troop movement or treasury ledger. To divulge such secrets could doom an entire city. This military imperative fundamentally shaped the networks themselves, encouraging deeper tunnels, more discreet shafts, and routes that followed defensible terrain. It forces us to see these structures in a starker light. In times of peace, they were engines of prosperity. In times of conflict, they became instruments of control and coercion, the hidden veins of power that could sustain an empire or strangle a rebellion. This understanding of water as a strategic weapon, a tool to be both protected and deployed, adds a darker, more complex layer to their legacy, one that flows naturally into the more reverent ways cultures sanctified this precious resource. The shadowy tunnels that served as strategic assets in war became, in times of peace, sacred passageways. For the engineers and diggers who built them, the act of tapping a hidden aquifer was more than a technical achievement. It was a spiritual communion. In ancient Persia, before a single shovel struck the earth to begin a new Qanat, Zoroastrian priests would conduct ceremonies at the chosen site, offering prayers to Anahita, the divinity of all waters. She was the source of life, fertility, and wisdom, and to access her bounty required reverence and ritual. This spiritual framing transformed the entire network from a simple construction project into a kind of temple, its long, dark tunnel a solemn corridor leading to a divine gift. The water that emerged at the mouth of the Qanat was not just a resource, it was a sacred manifestation, and its management became an act of religious duty. This view was widespread. In countless cultures, subterranean water was understood as belonging to a hidden, chthonic realm, a world of spirits and ancestors. The tunnels themselves were liminal spaces, thresholds between the world above and the world below. Diggers often performed small rituals or left offerings as they worked, seeking protection from cave-ins and appeasing the spirits of the earth they were disturbing. This wasn't superstition in a dismissive sense. It was a profound cultural acknowledgement of the risks involved and the magnitude of what they were attempting. By sanctifying the process, they bound the practical necessity of water to a deeper, communal value system, ensuring that everyone understood the gravity of maintaining this holy lifeline. We see this blend of utility and veneration clearly in the Roman world. The magnificent public fountains and ornate nymphaea that graced their cities were not merely decorative endpoints for aqueducts. They were active religious sites dedicated to the nymphs, the divine spirits of springs and waters. The water flowing from them was a continuous offering, and the act of collecting it was touched by sanctity. This public display served a dual purpose. It celebrated the engineering prowess of the state, while also embedding the water supply within a framework of public piety and gratitude. The water was a gift from the gods, delivered by the emperor, creating a powerful symbolic link between divine favor, imperial power, and civic welfare. Later, with the spread of Islam, religious principles became directly encoded into the management of water systems like the foggaras of North Africa. Islamic law places immense emphasis on the purity and equitable sharing of water, considering it a common right for all people and living things. This theological imperative provided a powerful, unifying framework for the complex allocation of water from a subterranean channel. Local water judges, or cadis, would often oversee distribution based on these religious laws, ensuring that downstream users received their fair share and that no one hoarded or polluted the community's source of life. The system's maintenance was thus not just a technical chore, but an act of zakat or almsgiving, a spiritual obligation to care for the community's well-being. So how did these beliefs directly motivate preservation? When a water source is seen as sacred, its neglect becomes a sacrilege. The annual cleaning of a Qanat, a difficult and dangerous task, was framed as a religious duty, a service to the community and to the divine. The knowledge of how to maintain the system was passed down not just as a trade, but as a sacred trust. This cultural layer acted as a powerful preservative, often outlasting political regimes and economic shifts. A community might abandon a field or a house, but it was far slower to abandon a source of water that was woven into its rituals, stories, and identity. This deep intertwining of faith and function created a resilience that pure engineering alone could not guarantee, safeguarding these hydrological wonders long after the empires that built them had faded, setting the stage for their knowledge to travel unexpected paths. The sacred duty of maintaining these water channels ensured their survival, but the engineering principles behind them were never static. They were ideas in motion, carried on the boots of soldiers, in the ledgers of merchants, and in the memories of migrating communities. One powerful vector for this spread was conquest. Following the rise of Islam in the 7th century, Arab armies expanding from the Arabian Peninsula encountered the sophisticated qanat systems of the Persian Empire. They quickly recognized their immense value for sustaining settlements in the arid lands they now controlled. Persian engineers, whether through collaboration or coercion, found their expertise in high demand. Their knowledge became a strategic asset of the new caliphates, leading to the deliberate construction of qanat-like systems, known as kataras in Morocco and fogaras in the Sahara, to consolidate control and develop agriculture across North Africa. By the 8th century, this technology had crossed the Strait of Gibraltar into Al-Andalus, Islamic Spain, where it irrigated the famous gardens and orchards of cities like Cordoba and Granada. This was not a simple copy and paste operation. Each new environment demanded adaptation. In the Canary Islands, isolated from these continental exchanges, the Guanches people developed their own version, known as qanats, tapping into the unique hydrological conditions of volcanic terrain. This raises a fascinating puzzle for historians. Was this independent invention a remarkable case of parallel problem solving, or did some sliver of knowledge arrive by sea? The evidence often suggests a blend. The core concept of a gently sloping underground tunnel might diffuse along trade routes like the Silk Road, reaching as far as western China, where it merged with local digging traditions to create the Karez systems. Yet, the specific techniques for surveying, shaft construction, and community management were often reinvented and refined locally, tailored to the rock, the climate, and the social structure. This diffusion was not solely the work of armies. Peaceful exchange was equally vital. Greek and Roman engineering texts, like those of Vitruvius or Frontinus, survived the decline of their empires in scattered manuscripts. Though these works were fragmented and often misunderstood in the intervening centuries, they became precious seeds during the Renaissance. Scholars rediscovering these ancient manuals found not just descriptions of arches and columns, but detailed accounts of surveying, aqueduct construction, and hydraulic principles. This re-encounter with classical knowledge inspired a new generation of European engineers and helped fuel a revival of sophisticated water management, proving that ideas preserved on parchment could lie dormant for 1,000 years and then spring back to life. This entire journey underscores a profound truth about ancient innovation. It was deeply interconnected, with knowledge flowing along the same routes as spices, silks, and religious beliefs. A technique born in the mountains of Persia could, over centuries, find expression in a Saharan oasis or a Spanish huerta. But this reliance on oral tradition and practical apprenticeship also contained a critical vulnerability. When a society was disrupted, whether by invasion, pandemic, or economic collapse, the chain of transmission could be broken. The meticulous, hands-on knowledge of how to survey a gradient or repair a collapse could vanish within a generation if the masters of the craft were lost. The technology itself was robust, but the living wisdom required to sustain it was fragile. This delicate balance between the diffusion of a brilliant idea and the peril of forgetting its practical soul brings us face to face with the moment when the lights in these tunnels finally began to go out. Silence eventually reclaims even the most carefully crafted systems. The great subterranean networks did not vanish overnight in a single cataclysm, but through a slow, relentless accumulation of pressures. A community weakened by conflict or hardship might find itself unable to muster the annual cleaning crew. A single season of neglect allows silt to build up, reducing the water flow. The next year, the task is harder, the reward smaller, and the knowledge of how to perform it begins to fade with the passing of the oldest Maganes. This was a death by 1,000 cuts, where the social contract maintaining the physical structure simply unraveled. political instability was a primary culprit. The highly centralized administration of the Roman Empire, for example, provided the organization and resources to patrol and repair its vast aqueduct networks. With the empire's fragmentation, that overarching authority dissolved, no single entity held the responsibility or the means to coordinate the massive upkeep required. Sections clogged, tunnels collapsed, and over generations, the once pure water sources were forgotten or repurposed as mere caves. In Persia, the Mongol invasions of the 13th century are frequently pointed to as a turning point. Historical accounts describe the deliberate destruction of qanats as a military tactic, a way to cripple the agricultural heartland of a region and force submission. Even when not directly targeted, the widespread disruption of society, the loss of skilled laborers, and the breakdown of local governance made the meticulous, cooperative work of maintenance impossible. The networks began to choke from neglect. Environmental change also played a subtle, powerful role. A prolonged shift to a drier climate could lower the water table beyond the reach of a qanat's mother well, rendering the entire system obsolete. Conversely, a period of intense flooding could cause catastrophic collapses or fill tunnels with debris too extensive to clear. The intricate qanat systems of the Syrian desert, which once sustained Umayyad palaces and way stations along trade routes, faded as the political power that built them receded and as climatic patterns may have shifted, making the land less forgiving. But perhaps the most definitive end for many of these systems arrived with a new sound in the 20th century, the sputter and hum of the diesel pump. Modern drilling technology and cheap energy created a paradigm shift. Why rely on a communal, gravity-fed channel requiring constant care when you could drill a deep, private well and pump water on demand? This individualistic solution was seductively simple and immediately powerful. It bypassed the need for cooperation and released landowners from ancient water-sharing agreements. The result was a rapid abandonment of traditional systems as symbols of the old ways. Yet this shift came with a hidden cost, one we are now reckoning with: the rampant depletion of ancient aquifers that had been sustainably tapped by qanats for millennia. The collective wisdom of slow water was traded for the immediate gratification of fast extraction. So what does this widespread forgetting teach us? It reveals that infrastructure is not just bricks and mortar, or in this case, stone and tunnel. It is a living embodiment of social cohesion, shared knowledge, and a long-term pact with the environment. When any one of those pillars crumbles, the physical structure is sure to follow. This great silence, however, would not last forever. The very emptiness of these tunnels soon began to whisper, attracting a new kind of explorer armed not with picks, but with curiosity and surveying tools. The silence was broken by the scratch of a pen on a map. In the 1800s, European travelers crossing the Iranian plateau documented strange, almost unnatural features on the barren landscape. They saw long, straight lines of circular depressions, like a sequence of craters marching across the desert towards distant mountains. To these explorers, they were puzzling geological formations or perhaps the remains of forgotten military trenches. It was only through local guidance that they learned the truth. They were standing atop the skeletal remains of a qanat, looking down its line of vertical ventilation shafts into the darkness below. This moment of rediscovery was not a single event, but the beginning of a slow, meticulous process of understanding. Archaeology shifted from simply noting these features to actively investigating them. Early efforts were perilous. Researchers would descend on ropes into these deep shafts, measuring and sketching by lantern light, piecing together the hidden geometry of the ancient water highways. These brave surveys provided the first real clues that these were not isolated curiosities, but the veins of entire vanished civilizations. Modern technology has transformed that lantern light into a penetrating digital vision. Ground-penetrating radar allows researchers to map the subterranean path of a tunnel without ever breaking ground, revealing its course, depth, and condition. LiDAR scanning, which uses lasers from aircraft, strips away vegetation to expose the precise alignment of ancient shaft lines across vast areas, showing networks that are far more extensive and interconnected than anyone had dreamed. Three-dimensional modeling software then reconstructs these systems, letting us virtually walk through an ancient aqueduct, understanding the challenges its builders faced at every turn. In Lyon, France, excavations of the buried Roman aqueducts uncovered more than just stonework. Archaeologists found the temporary camps of the construction crews, their simple tools, and even the marks of their chisels in the tunnel walls. These are intimate snapshots, transforming the grand engineering feat into a human story of daily labor and problem-solving. Dedicated scholars have spent lifetimes following these watery trails. Individuals like Dr. David Stronach conducted extensive surveys and excavations of Persian qanats, meticulously recording their dimensions, construction methods, and historical context. This work moved the systems from the realm of legend into the solid ground of academic and engineering study. Their research posed profound questions that we are still answering. How many thousands of kilometers of these tunnels actually existed? How did their construction techniques vary from Persia to Rome to the Sahara? Each new discovery, whether a perfectly preserved sluice gate in a Roman Specus or a previously unknown branch of a Figara in Algeria, forces us to redraw the map of ancient ingenuity. We continually have to adjust our perception of what these societies were capable of, pushing the timeline of hydrological understanding further and further back. This archaeological revival did something crucial. It bridged the gap between past and present in a very practical way. As engineers and hydrologists examined the precise data coming from these digs, they stopped seeing just historical artifacts. They began to see sophisticated solutions. The gentle, consistent gradient of a qanat, confirmed by laser levels, matched the ideal slope for preventing erosion and silt buildup. The placement of ventilation shafts was not just for digging, but for maintaining air pressure and water quality. The academic spark of rediscovery ignited a professional reappraisal, leading modern experts to look at these ancient blueprints with a new sense of respect and curiosity. The stones were beginning to speak again, and their message was not merely about the past, but about a wisdom that had been waiting in the dark, ready to inform our future. A computer model and a 3,000-year-old tunnel can arrive at the same perfect number. That is the quiet revelation happening in engineering offices and desert field sites today. Modern hydrologists, armed with satellite data and fluid dynamics software, have analyzed the gradients of ancient qanats. They found slopes consistently between 0.1 and 0.3%. A gentle decline that allows water to flow steadily without gaining enough speed to erode the tunnel floor or deposit silt. This is not a rough estimate. It is the exact same optimal range their own sophisticated models prescribe for sustainable, low-maintenance water channels. The ancients, with their sighting poles and water-filled trenches, achieved a precision that aligns with our most advanced calculations. This realization is more than a historical footnote. It is a catalyst for action. In regions like Iran, where deep mechanical wells have severely depleted ancient aquifers, there is a growing movement to look back. The Qanat Rehabilitation Project works not as archaeology, but as modern civil engineering, clearing silt, reinforcing walls, and restoring these gravity-fed systems to active duty. The goal is to provide water without the massive energy costs and environmental damage of pumping, reviving a technology that sustains rather than drains the landscape. The efficiency is stark. A modern pumped system fights gravity, consuming electricity or fuel to lift water from ever deeper sources. A qanat or a figara works with gravity, a passive, elegant system that requires no external power once established. Its only energy input is the sun, which drives the hydrological cycle that recharged the mountain aquifer in the first place. This principle is now inspiring designs far from its birthplace. In the arid landscapes of Arizona, researchers are developing Qanat-inspired subsurface irrigation systems. These modern adaptations use permeable pipes buried at a precise slope, delivering water directly to plant roots with minimal evaporation, a direct application of ancient logic to contemporary water scarcity. So where does this ancient intuition truly shine? It appears in the holistic view. Modern engineering often excels at solving a single, isolated problem, moving the maximum volume of water from point A to point B as quickly as possible. The ancient approach was inherently systemic. It considered the long-term health of the source aquifer, the energy budget of the society, the social structures for maintenance, and the ecological impact downstream. They built for centuries, not for decades. This comparison is not about romanticizing the past or discarding the incredible benefits of modern technology. It is about a thoughtful integration. We have powerful tools for modeling materials and monitoring that the ancients lacked. What we risk losing is their profound patience and their deep-seated principle of working within natural boundaries. The dialogue now opening is perhaps the most hopeful development. It is a conversation across time, where a laser level confirms the accuracy of a chorobates, and where a community water council's traditional knowledge is entered into a geographic information system. This fusion of timeless principle with cutting-edge tool is where truly sustainable design for our future is being born. The desert air shimmers with heat above eastern Iran, but beneath the town of Gonabad, a cool, ancient river still flows. This is the Qanat of Gonabad, a 2,700-year-old engineering marvel that is not a museum exhibit, but a working piece of municipal infrastructure. Its mother well plunges an astonishing 300 meters straight down, tapping into a fossil aquifer that has been draining slowly, faithfully, for millennia. The water emerges at the surface through a grand, vaulted structure called a mosaic, a public gathering place that has for centuries marked the intersection of survival and community. This is a system inscribed on the UNESCO World Heritage List not for being dead and preserved, but for being vitally, functionally alive. What keeps it alive is a living tradition of governance. Water from the Qanat is not owned but shared through a time-based allocation system called Dang. Local water councils, often composed of elders and elected representatives, manage these shares. The clock they use is not digital but celestial. For generations they have used a sundial or, more recently, a modified mechanical watch calibrated to the old system to measure each farmer's rightful turn. A share might be 12 hours of flow every 2 weeks, a rhythm that dictates the agricultural cycle of entire families. This practice embeds fairness into the very fabric of time, preventing conflict and ensuring that the resource is never monopolized. It is a stunning example of social technology developed in tandem with the physical one, yet this ancient balance faces modern pressures. Population growth demands more water. Deeper, mechanical wells drilled for new development can lower the water table, threatening the Qanat's very source. Climate change brings unpredictable rainfall and longer droughts. The community's adaptation is a quiet, ongoing negotiation. They have incorporated some modern materials for reinforcement in critical sections, and the water councils now contend with legal frameworks from the national government. But the core response remains rooted in that ancient principle of sustainable yield. There is a conscious understanding that pumping the aquifer dry for short-term gain would kill the Qanat forever, severing a 27th century lifeline. So the tradition of measured sharing persists, a cultural bulwark against overconsumption. For scientists, Gonabad is an open-air laboratory. Hydrologists monitor its flow rate as a direct indicator of aquifer health, gaining data no modern sensor could provide about long-term groundwater behavior. Historians study the maintenance records passed down orally and in ledgers, understanding how engineering knowledge was preserved across generations. The system's resilience offers a masterclass in durability, not just of stone and soil, but of social contracts. It proves that such a network can endure conquests, political upheaval, and technological revolutions, as long as the community around it remembers its value and upholds its rules. This living bridge to the Achaemenid Empire does not simply carry water, it carries a message about intergenerational responsibility. And as we follow the path of human ingenuity, we find that this message was heard and answered independently on the other side of the world. Far from the deserts of Iran, on the stark plains of southern Peru, the earth opens in a series of curious spirals. These are the ojos or eyes of the Nazca Puquios, a network of subterranean aqueducts that twist into the dry soil like the coils of a great stone serpent. While the qanats of Persia are a study in documented history and continuous use, the Puquios are a profound enigma. They were built by the Nazca culture, famous for creating the vast geoglyphs etched into the desert floor. But unlike those lines meant to be seen from above, the Puquios are a hidden masterpiece designed to be felt and used. Their construction date is hotly debated, with estimates ranging from 2,000 to 500 years ago, placing them in a timeline that is both ancient and surprisingly recent. This uncertainty makes them a puzzle without a clear manual, a technology that seems to have sprung from the landscape itself. What is immediately striking is their unique architecture. Instead of the straight-line vertical shafts of a qanat, the Puquios feature these descending spiral ramps. Walking down one feels like entering a labyrinth. The leading theory is that these spirals were functional wind catchers. As wind sweeps across the desert plateau, it would be funneled down the spiral opening, creating a flow of air into the horizontal water tunnel below. This airflow would serve two critical purposes. First, it would ventilate the tunnels, making maintenance and cleaning possible for workers. Second, and more ingeniously, the moving air could help draw groundwater up into the collection channels through a subtle pressure differential, essentially helping the system breathe and pull water along. It was a passive, elegant solution to moving both air and liquid, harnessing the ever-present coastal winds of the region. The construction mystery deepens when we consider the tools available. The Nazca did not have metal for picks or drills. They likely used hardened wooden stakes, stone tools, and the power of fire setting to fracture the hard, dry soil. The excavated material was hauled up in baskets via the very spiral ramps that define the structures, but the true test was the seismic reality of Peru. This is earthquake country. Building a deep, fragile tunnel that could collapse in a tremor would be a futile effort. The Nazca engineers seem to have understood this intuitively. Evidence suggests they built their tunnels in a way that allowed for flexibility, possibly using strategic curves or selecting stable geological strata, allowing the earth to move without shearing the entire system apart. Some Puquios are still functional today, a testament to their resilient design. Perhaps the most captivating aspect of the Puquios is their potential dual purpose. While they undeniably provided a reliable year-round water source in an extremely arid environment, feeding surface canals for agriculture, many researchers believe they held a deep ritual significance. Water was sacred to the Nazca, a literal lifeline in a deathly dry world. The spiral entrance descending into the cool, dark earth where life-giving water emerged may have represented a journey to the underworld, a connection to ancestral spirits or deities of fertility. The system was not merely plumbing, it was a cosmological map linking the heavens, the surface, and the subterranean realm. This blending of practical survival and spiritual belief ensured the Puquios were cared for not just as infrastructure, but as sacred trust. The existence of the Puquios forces a major shift in our historical perspective. For a long time, the narrative of advanced subterranean hydrology was centered on the Old World, from Persia to Rome. The Puquios stand as powerful, independent evidence that when faced with the same existential challenge of water scarcity, human minds on opposite sides of the globe arrived at remarkably similar, yet culturally distinct solutions. The Nazca did not need contact with Persian engineers. They looked at their own winds, their own earthquakes, and their own spiritual beliefs, and engineered a system that was perfectly adapted to their world. This independent innovation tells us something universal about human ingenuity. It is not the property of one civilization, but a spark that can ignite anywhere necessity demands it. And as we trace this spark along the ancient trade routes, we find it traveled even further, igniting one of the most extensive and culturally rich systems of all. The Turpan Depression sinks below sea level, a blazing basin in western China where summer temperatures can melt lead. Yet here, in one of the most inhospitable climates on Earth, lies a vast, verdant oasis. This miracle is not an accident of nature, but the direct result of human genius, a sprawling web of underground channels known as the Karez. Over 5,000 kilometers of these subterranean veins, a network longer than many great rivers, have been patiently carved beneath the desert over millennia. They transform the scorching wasteland into a lush garden, famous for its vineyards that produce some of the world's sweetest grapes and raisins. The origins of the Turpan Karez are a story of technological migration. Most scholars believe the knowledge traveled eastward along the Silk Road, from the Persian Qanat traditions, adapted and perfected by the local Uyghur people to suit their unique landscape. They tapped into the runoff from the distant, snow-capped Chanshan Mountains, guiding the precious meltwater through gentle underground slopes to the sun-baked fields below, preventing evaporation in the extreme heat. This engineering feat did more than just deliver water. It created an entire cultural ecosystem. The management of the Karez gave rise to a sophisticated social structure. Water allocation was, and in many places still is, governed by a traditional time-share system measured with ancient water clocks. A designated water master, a figure of great respect in the community, would oversee the distribution, ensuring every family received their fair turn. This practice fostered a deep sense of collective responsibility and mutual trust. The importance of the Karez is celebrated in local festivals, where music, dance, and shared meals give thanks for the water's gift, weaving the practical necessity of irrigation into the very fabric of cultural identity. But this ancient harmony now faces modern pressures. The very survival of the Karez is threatened on two fronts. First, the widespread adoption of electric-powered deep wells allows for the rapid extraction of groundwater, often at a rate far beyond what the aquifer can naturally replenish. This unsustainable practice lowers the water table, causing the older, shallower Karez to run dry. Second, the growing recognition of the Karez as a historical marvel has brought tourism. While this raises awareness and can provide economic benefits, it also risks turning living infrastructure into a museum exhibit. Foot traffic and development can damage the fragile shafts and tunnels, and the focus on spectacle can overshadow the intricate social systems that keep the water flowing. So, what is being done to preserve this dual heritage, both the physical tunnels and the intangible culture? The answer involves a delicate balancing act. Some communities are integrating modern materials like concrete linings for critical tunnel sections to reinforce the ancient structures against collapse. Educational programs aim to pass the specialized knowledge of Karez maintenance to younger generations, ensuring the skills do not vanish. Simultaneously, there is a push for legal recognition of traditional water rights to protect the Karez's allocation system from being overridden by commercial well drilling. UNESCO has noted the system's significance, adding it to tentative World Heritage lists, which helps mobilize international support for conservation. The goal is not to freeze the Karez in time, but to allow it to evolve as a sustainable, community-managed water source that honors its past while serving the present. Turpan stands as a powerful testament to how a landscape can be completely defined by ancient engineering. The identity of the region, its famous fruits, its social rhythms, and its cultural pride are all rooted in those hidden waterways. This raises a pressing, universal question. In our global rush toward new solutions, how do we protect the old ones that still work, that still hold wisdom and bind communities together? The fate of the Karez is a microcosm of a much larger challenge, one that forces us to look at all our aging infrastructure, not with nostalgia, but with a critical eye toward preservation and adaptation. A silent collapse often marks the beginning of the end. One day, a farmer notices the ground has given way near a familiar line of pits, the roof of a Qanat tunnel compromised by vibrations from a new road. This is not just a hole in the earth, it is a rupture in history, a direct conflict between the footprint of our present and the foundations of our past. The preservation of these ancient water networks is a battle fought on multiple, difficult fronts. The first threat is hydrological. Modern deep well pumps can extract groundwater in hours what a Qanat gently yields over months. This unsustainable draining lowers the water table far below the level of the ancient mother wells, leaving the tunnels dry and useless. The very technology that promised abundance can render a 1,000-year-old system obsolete, severing a community from its historical water source. The second front is physical expansion. As cities grow, their suburbs spread across the landscape, often unknowingly building over the invisible lines of subterranean channels. The weight of construction can cause tunnels to cave in, and the alteration of surface drainage can disrupt the delicate recharge of the aquifers that feed them. These networks were designed for a different world, one that moved at the pace of a donkey and a digger's hand, not the rumble of concrete mixers and excavators. Perhaps the most subtle threat is the erosion of knowledge, the specialized role of the Qanat cleaner, the Magani who understands the sound of the tunnel or the feel of the air, is often not passed down. Younger generations migrate to cities for different work, and the intricate, unwritten manual of maintenance fades from memory. When the last person who knows a particular tunnel's quirks is gone, that tunnel's fate is often sealed. Even well-intentioned recognition brings its own complications. UNESCO World Heritage status for the Persian Qanats has been vital for global awareness and protection efforts. But it can also turn a working piece of infrastructure into a tourist destination. Increased foot traffic around fragile shaft openings can accelerate erosion, and the focus can shift from keeping the water flowing to simply preserving the site for viewing. The economic reality is another hurdle. Conservation is expensive and slow. Restoring a collapsed tunnel section requires specialized skills and painstaking labor, an investment that may not show an immediate financial return compared to drilling a new well. Funding is often scarce as the benefits cultural continuity, sustainable water management, climate resilience are diffuse and long-term, while the costs are upfront and concrete. This presents us with a fundamental question. Do we treat these structures as relics of a bygone era, to be studied and displayed under glass, or as active, living systems that still have a vital role to play? The most promising path forward is to see them as both. Innovative policies are beginning to emerge that bridge this divide. Some regions are creating legal protections for the recharge zones of ancient aquifers, safeguarding the source water for both old and new systems. Engineers are working with traditional craftsmen to repair tunnels using a blend of ancient techniques and modern, non-invasive materials. Educational programs are documenting oral histories and training new apprentices in the old arts, ensuring the knowledge survives as a practical skill, not just a historical footnote. The goal is integration, not isolation. It is about proving that a 2,000-year-old qanat can be part of a 21st-century water management plan, that heritage and progress do not have to be opposing forces. This shift in perspective, from seeing these networks as problems of the past to recognizing them as assets for the future, unlocks a world of surprising potential. These ancient networks are not sealed in the past, they are blueprints waiting to be read. The very principles that kept deserts fertile for millennia are now being revisited as solutions for our own parched present. Consider the concept of a sponge city, a modern urban design aimed at absorbing rainfall rather than funneling it away through concrete drains. This is a direct echo of the qanat's genius. Instead of letting stormwater rush to the sea, cities could channel it into engineered underground infiltration galleries, mimicking the ancient mother well. These modern recharge qanats would quietly replenish local aquifers, turning a flood risk into a future resource and reducing the strain on centralized treatment plants. It is a shift from fighting water to working with it, a lesson etched in stone and soil thousands of years ago. The ancient commitment to gravity is another profound lesson. Our modern water systems are often powered by immense amounts of energy, pumping water across continents and over mountain ranges. The carbon footprint is staggering. The qanat and the Figara move water with nothing but slope and patience. While we cannot return to a world without pumps, their design philosophy urges us to ask a critical question. Where can we let gravity do the work? Redesigning distribution networks to maximize passive flow, even in small ways, could drastically cut energy consumption and build resilience against power outages. It is a principle of elegant efficiency that modern engineering sometimes overlooks in its pursuit of sheer force. Perhaps the most vital inheritance is not technical, but social. The community-managed Figara systems of the Sahara operated on intricate, time-tested rules for fair water sharing. In an era of increasing water scarcity and conflict, these models of decentralized, participatory governance are more relevant than ever. They demonstrate that sustainable management requires more than just good pipes. It requires clear, locally owned agreements and a shared sense of stewardship. Modern regions facing scarcity are looking to these traditions to design new water councils, blending traditional arbitration with contemporary legal frameworks to ensure equitable distribution and prevent the tragedy of the commons. We are already seeing this wisdom return to the land. In Oman, the ancient Aflaj channels are being meticulously cleared and restored by communities and government initiatives alike. This is not mere archaeology, it is a strategic response to desertification. The revived Aflaj provide a reliable, low-energy water source for agriculture, cooling villages, and supporting local ecosystems, offering a sustainable alternative to depleting deep aquifers. Similarly, in arid parts of the United States and Australia, researchers are designing qanat-inspired subsurface irrigation systems to grow crops with minimal evaporation loss. This leads to a fascinating vision. What would a 21st century qanat look like? Imagine a subterranean channel, its gentle slope calculated by satellite, lined with permeable, durable geotextiles. Fiber optic sensors embedded in the walls would monitor flow rate, water quality, and structural integrity, sending data to a smart grid that manages the entire watershed in real time. Local water allotments could be tracked via digital tokens, modernizing the ancient sundial system of time shares. The community's app would alert them to their maintenance day, keeping the human connection to the infrastructure alive. This hybrid system would marry ancient hydrological intuition with modern monitoring and materials, creating a resilient, intelligent, and sustainable water lifeline. This is the ultimate defiance of these antiquities. They refuse to be merely obsolete. They stand as reservoirs of wisdom, proving that the most advanced solution for our future might just be hidden in the quiet, dark flow of our past. These silent streams beneath the sand and stone offer us a quiet challenge. They ask us to reconsider what true progress looks like. Is it only about newer, faster, and more powerful tools? Or is it also about wisdom, about designing systems that work in concert with the natural world and endure for generations? The legacy of these networks is a testament to a different kind of brilliance, one measured not in horsepower but in foresight, not in conquest but in careful stewardship. Our ancestors understood that water was the thread that wove a society together, connecting the farmer in the field, the merchant in the city, and the leader in the palace. They built not just for themselves but for their children's children, embedding their values of equity and care into the very rock below. In our modern world, facing droughts and shifting climates, that long-term perspective is the most valuable lesson we can recover. It invites us to look down, to learn from the patience hidden underground. So the next time you turn on a tap, pause for a moment. Think of the Magoni aligning shafts by starlight, the Roman Aquarius checking his clay pipes, the community gathering to clear the annual silt. Their work whispers across the centuries, reminding us that the most profound solutions often flow from humility, cooperation, and a deep respect for the source. What ancient marvel captures your imagination? Is it the quiet persistence of the Qanat, or perhaps another forgotten innovation? Share your thoughts below, and if you want to keep exploring the hidden corners of history, subscribe and join us for the next journey. Thank you for listening.